Hello and welcome everyone to Indie Incursion, an indie games podcast. This is a supplemental episode. This will go up alongside our episode 49. This week, I have a developer on the podcast once again. His name is Alex Kissi Jr., and he is developing Raya. So how you doing today?
Good, Vaughn. Thank you for, just want to thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm pretty fantastic. It's a good day. It's a Sunday. It's nice and lax. I had something to eat before this. It's great. And I played some WoW Classic because I'm that professional.
That's awesome.
So did I say the name of the game correctly? Is it Raya?
You did say that correctly. Wow, which was I'm impressed. Wow, thank you.
I feel like I'm on my game today. I said both your name correctly and the name of the game, so.
Yeah, you're too good at this. I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm just so fantastic, which is kind of crazy because if you listen to any of the podcast episodes, I'm so bad at reading. It's actually it's like atrocious. I have written sections of the podcast that I mess up, and I wrote it.
That's hilarious.
I don't get it. Yeah, it's kind of weird. So you have a game, Raya, coming out. It is releasing on iOS and Android on October 25th, correct?
That is correct. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So how about you tell us about your game? So I'm going to ask you about your game and stuff like that first, and then I'm just going to ask you about your life near the end to make it kind of nice and easy. Have a two-parter interview. So, yeah. Oh. So let's hear about Raya.
Okay, Vaughn. Yeah, so, Raya is a actual game that I've been working on for the past over 4 years. Using can I shout out engines if I'm using or whatever I'm using?
Yeah, you could do whatever you want, dude. I don't mind anything on this podcast.
Because everyone always says, what did you make to do that game? So I used something called Unreal Engine. I was getting a lot of conversations from my friends saying like, hey, like you should either use Unity or Unreal. I know that's a whole different conversation, but I was coming from a C++ background, so my friend recommended, hey, like this engine uses C++, and I think that'll fit right in your alley. So I had to download the engine, study it. So my whole way of studying the engine, I'm learning. I'm learning about various parts from animations to sequencing to. I think I spent several months on one section of the game. But it's
so you're fairly self-taught with the Unreal Engine?
Very self-taught. I did buy some courses on Udemy, which some friends recommended, and excellent courses for me to get started. And then I started playing around and making my own little like demo versions of games. But it was ultimately like scary when you open it up. You're like, oh my gosh, like I never made a game. Like this is crazy.
Yeah, I've messed around in Unity for a little while, and there's just, once you open up an engine, just in general, there's so much there that you're like, I don't even know how to start. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, so I totally understand that feeling.
Yeah, I was totally overwhelmed because I'm coming from an iOS position, like background. Like I made iPhone apps, and they kind of took off and did their thing. And so for me to open up another whole like IDE that was just like completely like big and massive, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a try.
So that leads me into one of my questions is your previous experience with iOS and like Android games, is that the reason that you chose to release Raya on iOS and Android?
I chose to release Raya on iOS and Android is because of the cross-platform capabilities, which most of the game engines provide. But I am coming from an iOS background because I wrote iPhone apps, music specifically, that I had some level of success where they took off, and I was on the top paid app store. This is before like articles were written about like developers. Like I never got any of those things, but let's just say I was making a lot of money that I was just like, okay, I'll just be quiet.
That's pretty awesome. Nice. So what is Raya in general? Because I know it's kind of an action RPG, correct?
Yeah, it's action RPG, open world. I wanted to, like, it's funny because I played video games growing up, and I had my Nintendo, like everyone had, and my mom Sony PlayStation, and I remember playing Tomb Raider, and I was like, oh, this game is cool. It's like, just running around and, fighting creatures and things and shooting creatures. And I when I came out with this game, I said, man, I want this to be open world. I want it to have a nice, good feel on the mobile as well. So a lot of people would say like, man, it's hard to play mobile games, but once I end up like giving someone the game Raya, and I tell them, here, like, just test it out, and I'll give them the iPad or my iPhone, and they're like, this is actually dope. I like this. So
Yeah,
it's yeah.
that's kind of interesting. People seem to have like issues playing games on phones. I've played a couple different ones. Like I played a 2D hack and slash platformer called
Mm-hmm.
Tarkus a while ago.
Tarkus. Okay.
Yeah, that one is pretty easy to run. And then of course Apple just released like Apple Arcade. So
Arcade. Yeah.
obviously, hopefully there's going to be like a big influx of people coming to iPhones to play video games.
Yeah, no, I the whole market of mobile is outstanding. I previously worked at a company where all we dealt was with game developers, like huge game mobile game developers. Um, and there was a particular gentleman that I met. A long story short, his name is Henry, and he works at Scopely. And they make some really amazing title games. And I just kind of build a relationship with him, speak with him every month. We have dinner and just kind of learn about the industry. And these guys are making, like, I don't want to disclose numbers, but on mobile games they're making like millions of dollars. It's drastically changing because, like, in China people have way more mobile devices and then consoles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
pretty interesting. So with Raya, because there is this, I don't know, there is this kind of weird conflation with indie games to also you have your game and then it also has some sort of in-game transaction. Is there anything like that in Raya, or is it just the game?
you know what? That's always like a hard conversation to talk about. There is in-app purchases in there, and and you can totally get the game and play through it without going through the in-app purchases, and you can you know really build and build your weaponry based on your skills and just playing the game. But these days there's so many. I look at the analytics and these kids. They're just consuming like in-app purchases like it's nothing. Like you look at Fortnite and they're just like every Friday at 4 p.m. they're waiting for skins. And for something that is that really changes the demographics in game developers, because we don't want to be the ones that are like out here like trying to like monetize all day. But if you want that cool weapon, Jonathan, I just bought the new, like, axe. So then he goes to his dad and says, hey, Matthew bought an axe with the game on Raya. I want that too. And then he ends up buying it. So it's just like this cultural, like, everyone's trying to compete, and just live, and say that they have this or have that, and they're able to complete this mission. And it sometimes it's another conversation to talk about that. But I do want to let people know that I worked extremely hard to give people, if they're paying for in-app purchases, like, this is really a great item that you're purchasing, or so that way you can be like, whoa, this really cool. Like, this is a really cool experience, not just like, whoa, I just bought all this and it's just the same feel.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the big issue with in-game purchases, not in-gap, the, the most issue people have is like pay to win or just seemingly their inclusion at all, which I don't really have an issue with.
Hmm.
I personally am all for developers finding new ways to kind of like supplement their income because they need to actually live. So I have no problem with it. And it seems like Raya is completely playable without them, or at least that's what you said. So that's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I wanted to make that, and I spoke to like some really hardcore gamers that just want to get. I don't want to be those people that the company makes all this money, and you see on the comments in the games like they're just ripping everyone off. They just need money, and they're just taking out money, and it's like these guys. I'm building a product that I want you to enjoy and have a great time. Like, it took a lot of years to make, and I don't want to just come out here and just take people's money. I want them to be like, your best product is the product that, when you're not in a room, someone says like that's actually a pretty good game. And for games to have that kind of review is very tough. Everyone's so hard. So I try to like build this. When I built out Raya, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this game and make sure like if anyone that just wants to play the game without in-app purchases can do so. And that's one of the great things I think I appreciate about Raya.
That's pretty fantastic. So you talked about Raya having different weapons and different like skill trees. How do those work specifically?
So like you basically start out in the game, and you have like a basic axe, and there's like, so there's huge swords, there's like Thor hammers, and you can basically when you're fighting your enemy, attacking your enemy, every soul you kill it counts as one. So you kill one person, that's one soul. And over time, when you're accumulating all these souls, you can go into the store and buy them when you when you destroy the enemies. For bosses, you even get more than one soul. Like as normal. So you're able to like sharpen up and get really equipped to fight some of the most dangerous, vastly um, scary creatures, Dark Souls, as we call them, because there's a particular point in the game where if you like really just go after one of the biggest bosses, you're gonna die. Like he's gonna crush you without just if you start off because it's an open world, you can just go like, oh, I want to fight that guy, and he's like, oh, he's level like 1,000,000, I can't fight him.
That's pretty cool, though. Something that people have really praised, like Breath of the Wild, for is that if you wanted to, you can just go right forward to kill Ganon. You're probably gonna die, but you could do it.
I
So
wouldn't
that,
recommend.
yeah, there's a freedom there, which is pretty amazing, and most games don't actually include that, especially ones that like have leveling and weapon systems. So that's really cool that you guys did that.
Oh wow, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it's free and open as possible, so that way people can go and explore. And if you see a particular boss with a higher level, you will see it. You're like, okay, I think it's too late to run now. Um, what
You
you
just
learn?
get trapped.
Yeah, you just get trapped. You're like, okay, you could run away, but it's that's a good thing about it. You can just like run and leave because it's open world. You can run around and walk away. Yeah.
So you talked about souls. These are like the currency that you get, right? Because you said you get
Yes.
one for killing one person. So
Yes.
then you use them to purchase weapons, or
Yes.
does that also apply to skills or just the weapons?
These are basically the weapons and potions and health and what else I believe. Yeah, skills. That at one point there's it's this really cool like animation where like a whole bunch of meteors come down and it crashes towards the enemy or towards the enemies. So like these are certain skills that you can kind of develop and purchase with the souls. Like it's like your currency with the souls because these are dark souls. If I'm explaining it right.
Yeah, I gotcha. So you brought up the Dark Souls twice. I was really curious when I read in one of the articles, I believe from Pocket Gamer that you sent me, is the Dark Souls thing a reference to the actual game, or is that just completely a coincidence?
There's coincidence, yeah. When I read, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cliche. Like, it's in everything. Yeah, it's a ref. It's not really direct towards them. It's just a coincidence. Like, okay, wow, like these are the Dark Souls because they really are dark. And these Raya is basically he comes down from the good gods. He came to save the world. So he's responsible for saving and the entire world. And there's certain words there's certain like you can jump between worlds in this game just to kind of save it. But yeah, going back to your question, yeah, it's just a it's just a coincidence. And I'm like, oh yeah, that Dark Souls, okay, I hope no one thinks that's where I got it. But yeah, it was a coincidence.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because there's all the I personally I've done it before and I totally despise when I do it, but there's always the talk about when anytime a game comes up and it's like at all hard, they're like related to Dark Souls. I shouldn't say I despise it. It's just like there are other games out there, but yeah, that's interesting that it's totally a coincidence. You brought up kind of the story of Raya. What is it specifically? Because it has something to do with religion, correct? It's about like Raya being the son of God, something similar to that.
Yeah. It was crazy because like it was a really sensitive subject, and I'm like, oh man, like when I was writing this, I was like, okay. I was like, okay, this sounds very biblical, but I don't want to throw it too much like that in their face. But it's similar to it, where Christ comes down in form, but this time he's coming down to kick ass, right? He's coming to really like fight the dark ones and the demons, and it's interesting how I related it to the scriptures of God sending His only Son. You're the only one that can save the world. So yeah, that it does refer to some biblical terms.
Awesome. I mean, I don't think many people are going to have issues with it, mostly because there are games like the Darksiders series, which have to do with biblical like
Oh,
iconography because they have like the four horsemen of the apocalypse and such, and it's about
oh, yeah,
demons
yeah, yeah.
fighting angels. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I don't
wicked. Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna have too much of a problem with it. If anything, people are probably gonna be into it, so that'll
Okay.
be
Awesome.
nice.
Awesome.
But
Thank you.
so what are the inspirations for the story of Riot? Because it is like you said, it does have something to do with religion, but you didn't want it to be too heavy-handed. So what were your inspirations? What made you want to write this kind of a story?
It's funny because I come from a slightly, a religious background, like, and I would attend service every Sunday, like every Sunday, where the point where you're like, okay, I just want to go like watch the basketball game, I don't want to miss it. Um, but it was like it was actually a particular friend that I met, and he was just like telling me like, man, like as when I was building this game, he was like, hey, like this would be cool if you do this and do that, and you listen to everyone as you're building it, and he kind of struck me in a way, and I said, okay, I think I can try it. Maybe I can. I want to make sure I can at least add some positivity to it, not just running around and like destroying people. I mean, you see all the news happening where they're trying to ban video games, and you're like, well, there is some positive in the video games, not always like we're going to shoot and kill everyone. So I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to add a little bit of like light to it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's awesome. Having a good story to a game that's not just like hack and slash, beat 'em up, just killing stuff. That's honestly exactly what I'm about. I love
Okay.
story in video games.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Vaughn. I mean, it's yeah. It's something that I wanted to at least me. I mean, me having a 3 year old, so I kind of like see what kind of games they play and see what I can be able to contribute at least a little bit. Because my son sees me working on the game, and he's like, "Oh, what's that? Like, who's that? Like, that's a demon? That's an angel?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah."
That's really cool that your son actually like sees you working on the game.
Yeah, I've been working on the game before he was born, so it's actually weird to see him. He's 3 now. To see him like, look at my laptop screen and it's like, oh, what's that? And run up to it, and, when I'm working on certain animations or like a sequence, or he's just like, cool.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting way to grow up because not only do you grow up in an environment like with video games, just being able to play them, but your dad also being a developer. You get to see both sides. That's
Yeah.
that's really awesome.
Oh, thank you. I didn't notice that. Like, what I mean, besides him looking at me, I mean, he wasn't looking at me when I was writing code. Like, that's the boring part. He was like, what's on the screen? Okay, whatever.
Yeah. So, how do you actually, since you brought up your son, how do you juggle your basically duties as a father and of a game developer? Because there's all sorts of stuff in the media nowadays where they talk about game, like the crunch in the games industry, people putting in a lot of time into their video games, and in a way it is kind of required. You've been working on this game for 4 years since before your son was born. So, how do you really kind of juggle both wanting to make this game and being a dad?
Ooh, man, those are like, Vaughn, great question. That's good.
Thanks.
That's one of the ones that I still try to figure out to this day. I mean, someone asked me like, "How did your wife not leave you and your kid?" I'm like, "Wow, that's kind of sad. If my kid
That's a
left me
mean
too."
question. Jeez.
I was like, "My kid too? Like, what? He just packs up his bag and like, I'm out, Dad. See ya." No, it's tough. Like, I mean, there's times where I don't have time for like, well, there's most of the time I don't have time for myself. I had to learn how to sacrifice whether I watch that Netflix show or whether I finish writing that code. The only time I actually think I'm able to write or do something that is remotely like entertaining is while I'm munching something. If I'm eating something, I'm either watching a tutorial on like VFX, or I'm watching a tutorial on a new feature that came out with the engine just to stay up, ahead of the game. And my wife, God bless her, Patricia, she really gave me a little leeway to do things. She didn't understand at first, but now she's like seeing all these people reaching out, and she's just like, wow, like thank you for, she's just like, wow, you're very consistent, and I don't know how you stay up all this time in a laptop, and it's tough. You just gotta learn how to balance what's important and what's not. So going out to the park with my son Tyler on Sundays or the weekends, or spending time with my wife and movie night. Um, just but did you just know you're not gonna have time for yourself? Like I need to go play basketball. Like that's not happening. You know what I mean? Later on, yeah, after working on the game. But yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, so it sounds like you kind of eat and sleep video games, and then you get to make time for your family, but all your needs kind of go to the wayside. Like you don't have a lot of time for yourself. That really sucks. That's kind of a bad way to say that, but that totally sucks.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that because it does suck. And when I get like opportunities like interviewing with you, and it feels like, okay, here's a little bit of time for myself. Like I genuinely do enjoy this, and now I get to speak to great people that are in this industry and kind of share my moments and my struggles and my thoughts. And I think like that's really important. And I get to, yeah, I remember having a conversation with someone, and he was like, "So you are publishing your own video game, and first of all, you're African American. I've never met an African American developer." And I'm like, "Wait, what's that?" Like, so it's like, and he said, how did you, like, what do you do? Like, how did you learn how to get into this? Because, most people are athletes or basketball players. And I said, I just really genuinely like technology, and really fell in love with it. So if I'm not having time for myself, writing games is my like hobby, right? So I think I would say that's the time I'm spending.
Yeah, you actually genuinely enjoy working on your video games, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like still in a way making time for yourself. That's good, I guess.
That's a positive. Besides suck, like that sucks. Yeah, no, I trust me. Yeah, that's trying to watch Avengers. I had to watch Avengers Endgame on the plane. That's how bad I didn't get. I didn't go to the movies to watch it. That's how busy I was.
I feel bad. I went to the movies like 3 times to watch it.
How dare you, Vaughn?
I
I'm
just
jealous.
happened to have the time, I guess. So, this I actually didn't even have this question, but since we brought it up, what would you say would be like? What do you think could change in the industry to actually kind of afford developers to have more time for themselves? Like certain games have been pushed back so that they don't have to hit certain release dates. Like I believe Studio MDHR, the people behind Cuphead, ended up pushing back their most recent DLC so that their developers, their employees could have a life. What would you say might change in the games industry that would help developers actually have lives? Would it just be like gamers waiting longer for video games, or do you have any ideas? Really, you don't have to have the solution, but do you have any ideas that you think might actually help you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like I when I see a game come out, and then I sometimes I like to follow like who was working on it, and you see like these people put so much time in from their so much time that they take away from their family, and it's like sometimes the reception of the game is like, this is terrible, and you're like, wow, I really feel sorry for those people that lost all that time from their family to get a reception like this. um yeah, it's a hard balance, if you truly want to get something done, and you have management and telling you like we need to get this done, and then the developers are like, sometimes I've heard of people ship out games and there's completely nothing in it, and because they're pressured for the developer, like this needs to go out tomorrow, and developer has to just like, okay, like I'm gonna send you empty code and this is what you want because you're pushing me. And it's kind of tough. It's a tough balance to deal with, but I truly don't believe sometimes where you can spend so much time on something where you see like, oh, that game took like 20 years and it's still not out. Like, it's kind of like, I don't know who's investing in things like that, but there should be some time where you can, the publisher or the studios can give them time to say like, hey, like the game is out, like take a nice, I don't know, like a month or two to just relax and with your family from the time that we took away from you. Because at the end of the day, when these games get published, they make millions of dollars, and someone's salary for the year, it's not going to hurt the publisher, or the game studio, because they making all this money. And I seen the analytics, and I seen the income from some of these publishers, and it's just like, wow, you're paying your developer that much? Okay, that's not fair.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like you guys should possibly get paid more for your contribution, and it seems like the culture of getting games out so quickly, like annual releases, is kind of affecting developers negatively. Is that where you're
Hmm.
going?
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I mean, definitely because like if you have a deadline you need to hit, and you're really you have a lack of resources, and you really want to push the envelope in it. I mean, I understand pushing people to the limit, but like let's not over like work them, because some results can be very bad. Like I said, I've seen games come out and it was like, whoa, where's the character? He's not even here. It's and these are big studios too, so I just want to make sure that they, if they're listening, or I know if open up a studio of mine, I'm the only developer here, so um, now I'm getting talks of people saying like, hey, if you ever did something, I would love to work with you, and I want to build a culture where it's more of a family base rather than like a, and that's where every company gets to a point where they get too big and they like scale, and then everything seems corporate.
Yeah, yeah. Sadly, the larger you get, the more the fiscal responsibilities seem to sink in, and you're like, hey, I have to get my game out at this point in time just to pay people. But then,
People,
of
yeah.
course, yeah, it comes down to how much they're actually getting paid. But so you are a solo developer on Raya. Have you had anybody else help you out with maybe the soundtrack or anything? I know.
Oh yeah.
So
Sorry.
you have?
Yeah, so the soundtrack, I have it's a long story short, like one of my friends, his brother, uh, was doing music production, and I think I was showing my friend my game, and and his brother was like, oh, like I do music, would you like be interested in working on a soundtrack? I said, have you done games? He's like, no. So I was like, sure. Like, I like to give people opportunity where he seemed so like enthused, and he was like really loving the game. He's like, man, I really want to be involved with this. And I said, sure. And I was like, he was like, you don't have to pay me. I just need a portfolio. So I was like, oh, even better, you know? So he worked on the soundtracks, and there's one particular, I had to pay for some assets in the game, because I didn't have time to go into Maya and do a bunch of stuff. So the main character was definitely paid, and the rest I basically did myself.
All right. All right. That's kind of interesting. Solo devs, I respect solo devs more than most just because games take a long time to create and you guys just do it entirely by yourselves, or in your case there is someone helping you, but mostly just with soundtrack, so that's cool. How do you what you talked about possibly creating your own studio? Is that something you're looking forward to? Like, is that, if given the opportunity, would you actually open up your own studio and really ramp up your game production?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm having talks of I put the trailer out, and then on Twitter, and then like I was surprised to get almost 15, almost it's at 14,000 views. I was like, holy crap! And then I started getting like some emails and some DMs from people saying like, who worked on this? Like, what's the studio? And I'm just look, I'm kind of like replying like, yeah, we worked on this, and it's just like me. um, but I am like, I'm open to like definitely teaming up with inspiring indie developers that that want to you know to be a part of something that's cool, because I have so many other game ideas that I want to release, but this is something that I wanted to put out to let people know like, okay, we're here. And if anyone out there that's willing to like you know want something for themselves, and one of the biggest things I say is like, if you want something for your family and you want residuals, it's good to build a more family small studio, rather than to say like, okay, I'm going to pay you 120,000 a year, but when you're gone, like what do you have? Like you want to have some royalty, you want to have something for yourself, for your kids who you leave over.
Yeah, something consistent that's always coming through.
Yeah, that's one of, sometimes it's hard to preach that to certain people. Like I have another guy that we just recently teamed up on some artwork. He's gonna try to do some artwork for me, now that he sees where it's going. But and I said, hey, like I'll be, I would like to build a studio. I mean, I have investors that I spoke to that have billions of dollars that they want to do things with me. But I'm like, okay, let me build my, and me own a lot of what I'm doing, rather than just give it out to everyone. And I want to make sure that the team that I'm around, their families are okay. So that's one of the things I try to preach to people. Say, hey, like, you can own percentage of this. Like, this is yours. Like, you can always say like every month you got something coming in, rather than, some people just want to get the whole lump sum. And yeah, I remember the particular story. I don't know if it was like Denzel Washington, where he, or it might have been Samuel Jackson, where he said like he did a role for a movie and he wanted the money so bad that I don't know if he took his initial pay and didn't get the residual, but he said, I'm gonna not take the whole full lump sum. I'm gonna take the residual, and that movie ended up being Pulp Fiction. So he made the right decision of taking the residual because he's gonna be paid for life.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing that happens in Hollywood that doesn't really seem to happen within the games industry, which is really cool that you're including that. But like Vin Diesel specifically, I guess, I believe either during the initial filming of Triple X or Fast and the Furious, he kind of foregoed a larger payment to hold on to the I think maybe it was like the Chronicles of Riddick IP for some reason, and then he actually owns that. It's kind of weird. Like, you don't really hear about that within the games industry, people actually owning a share of what they're creating. Instead, it's just like, oh yeah, they get a paycheck, they create a game, and then they get a paycheck. Instead, you're kind of wanting to foster this culture of, it's not just you getting paid, it's also you taking part in creating this, and you get a piece of it instead of just releasing it and then you're done. That's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, Vaughn. I mean, I'm a big advocate. And, like, I own my own, own my own little software company, and of course, it's an indie. I mean, it's small, but I own it, right? But at the same time, you have to put in time to push that out there, so you and your family can eat, and or your friends or whoever your loved ones. But I mean, I'm always came from an entrepreneurial standpoint, so that's why I'm always trying to preach to people like, hey, like, I can give you money, but how about I give you an outlet where you can make more money, but you don't have to ask me all the time, where you're building your own. And it's kind of hard to build that out with certain people's minds and perspective. But in the gaming industry, of course, it's probably hard because the publishers own everything, right? I just got an email like 2 days ago with Microsoft Xbox. They reached out to me because I said I want to put this game on Microsoft, and they were like, "Oh, this is cool! Like, great! Like send us a demo now so we can play around with it." So and it's like, you look back and you say, okay, wow, this. I step back and say, wow, okay, so like now I'm talking to Microsoft. Now I can actually. I was just thinking mobile. Now I can actually publish on a Microsoft. Like, this is crazy, So now you start to put in position like, okay, I'm gonna be a publisher now. Before you saying I just want to make games, now you can be able to help others. So I think in the mindset of people trying to own their own titles, it's harder more because all the publishers own everything.
Are you wanting? So you brought up Microsoft. So you're actually wanting to bring Riot to consoles. You're not just kind of wanting to develop it for iOS and Android. You want to bring it to Xbox One or possibly other consoles as well.
Yeah. Next year I wanted to. So I just basically I like to exercise things in advance. So I'm not like just like immediately working on it. So I said, you know what? This is Riot is already PC ready and really almost console ready. So I was like, you know what? Some people when I say I make a game, they're like, oh, is it gonna come on an Xbox or PlayStation? I'm like, I'm not sure. But then I started to say, you know what? Let's give it a try. And to get feedback back from PlayStation and Xbox is just like, whoa, like these are titles that consoles that I play. Like now I'm in the space of becoming an indie developer. It just pushes me to say, okay, like I guess I can't stop here, But I do primarily just want it to be mobile. But when it comes to that, trying to do something bigger than what you thought, then just let's go. Let's just move.
Yeah, why not roll with the momentum of your game?
Yeah, why not? It can open opportunities for more people to join your studio and say like, okay, now let's work, let's make things happen.
So this is kind of a weird question, but since we brought up PC and everything, this is kind of an issue that people have been having recently with games going exclusive on the Epic Game Store. Would you, like, if given the opportunity, would you go exclusive on the Epic Game Store, PC specifically? Of course, they release on consoles and such, just indiscriminately, but just PC.
That's a good Vaughn, that's a good question. And I'm pressured behind some things because I am using the Unreal Engine and Epic is like, hey, 10%. We're only going to take 12 versus, the other people taking like 30 or something.
Yeah,
Um,
Steam.
See, so it's like it's a really tough thing, and I know like people don't like just exclusively released on this and that. Um, that's I really don't know what to say about that, but I just want to make sure that it's in everyone's hands, and I don't want to be limited to just one. I don't believe there should just be one monopoly of distribution. I mean, that just makes it tough for developers, and yeah, I'm not too sure about that, but I definitely want to make it for every, whether it be on Steam or whether it be on Unreal or yeah, the Epic Store.
So I'm assuming the revenue shares kind of affect your idea on where to put it, specifically because, like you said, Steam's like 30% versus Epic's like I believe it's like 10 to 12%, and then using the Unreal Engine specifically, they actually offer you additional discounts, which is pretty crazy, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Plus, on top of that, like plus I'm using an engine, so it's like it probably dropped down to zero. Who knows? But I speak a lot with the Unreal people, and yeah, and it's from internal, friends are telling me like, they just don't want to see Steam alive. They want to kill Steam because they feel like they're robbing the developers, right? And it's hard for Steam to say that too because Google and Apple both take 30%. So it's Epic. They're really trying to help the community by bringing it down, and hopefully you'll start to see some big publishers on Epic. So we'll see.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really believe it, but I think the CEO of Epic specifically said that they would stop doing exclusivity deals if Steam would lower their revenue share. Like if Steam would instead from taking
Absolutely.
30%, 20%, but took less. I personally don't have any issue with that. I think that's great. They're kind of I don't know, they're kind of holding a gun to Steam's head and they're just like, we're going to keep taking your money unless you actually pay people what they should be owed. Because sadly, indie game developers don't get a large revenue share on Steam. They're definitely getting like taken. It's weird. It's
Yeah.
odd. I don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, I've never released anything on Steam, but from just the feedback and people, you know even consumers, they're kind of like mad at it, and it's like they've been in the game for a long time, so it's kind of, I'm surprised no one challenged it. Like, hey, like these guys are, and no disrespect to them, at all, but when you're the only one that can do it, then you can play around with the prices. But now you have like other platforms like Epic stepping it up, and I think some other platforms that are allowing people to distribute games. And I think with Epic, they did a really great job because they're like a bully right now. Like they're the only people that actually released a game out of Google Play Store and said, you know what, we don't want to be on the Android App Store. We're just going to be independent. You can download from our website and crush them.
Yeah.
Most game Android developers are like, what, where, how are people going to know about me? So yeah, it's just the power you have when you're that successful.
Yeah, it seems like Epic has become somewhat of a heel. Like, it's like, okay, things need to change, and we don't care if
Hmm.
we look bad. In the meantime, we're just going to try to change things. I think that's pretty great. Do you play games on PC at all? Kind of a weird question, but
Yeah, I mostly played like I was a huge PC like game. Like I played Counter Strike, and like that was my thing. Like Counter Strike was one of like really serious hardcore Counter Strike fan. And I played Apex Legends on my laptop as well. Yeah, I play a few, but like I said, when you're like making a game rather than playing it, it sometimes could like hinder your time zone. But I try to do the best I can.
yeah, you don't have a whole lot of time to play video games, which definitely sucks.
Oh no, I will definitely be having, but I'm like one of those type of people that go and like Reddit or YouTube and start looking at other people play, and it's like, oh, I like this, I like that. I think you have to do your research. You also got to do your homework, right? So it's also good to look at like other indie developers, what they're doing, what they're coming out with, or what they're playing.
Yeah, it's like scoping out the competition in a way, even though your game might not compete with them, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. I think I was recently at I think I don't know what was that one of the game conferences here in Los Angeles, and I think SIGGRAPH too. I was at SIGGRAPH, but then there was another one I was at, and I was just scoping around and see what kind of games that were going to be coming out, and Raya wasn't too far off from what these guys. I mean, these huge, developers having indie studios in China, like pumping out like 100 games and like high quality. And I was really impressed that, okay, like I'm able to think I have something, from what people say, like, yo, you really have something, so you just got to look at what's around you, right?
Yeah, you talked about what Raya kind of has, what makes it special, what makes it unique. So I saw in that same article on Pocket Gamer that it has something called dynamically generated enemies and areas. What exactly is that? And what made you guys decide, or you specifically, since you're working on it pretty much solo, what made you decide to implement that in your game instead of
Yeah.
just doing the rigid, like, this is where a guy is,
Yeah,
like
no, yeah.
monster closets?
Yeah, no. That's one of the one of the coolest features of using like great engines like Unreal Engine, because like the the ability of features that allows you to do is just really great, and especially on the mobile, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is great. Like this is gonna help me save memory, retention, and especially when you just don't want to place 100 act like enemies in one time, like your phone battery can die, and like you have to look at optimizing it. And that's one of the biggest things I learned in just making mobile games, because when you're working on a desktop or PC game, you're like, yeah, this, that, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and in mobile you're like, whoa, wait, we can't add that on there. Your game is gonna crash, or it's gonna run unsmoothly, especially when you're dealing with Android stuff too as well. So I learned a lot, and one of the biggest things of like adding dynamically, enemies spawning here and there, and just levels, and things that are random popping in and out. Like to this day, I don't know what enemies were going to be popping up in what locations, because it's super random. But it helps. It helps performance wise, and also with experience from playing in the game. You're like, oh, I know he's going to be there. No, he's not. It's always an element of surprise.
Yeah, it makes your game less predictable. It's kind of like standard roguelike tactics where you don't know in the next room if there's gonna be a chest, or if there's gonna be 20
Yes.
enemies that are gonna light you up.
Yeah, that is very true. In playing Raya, you'd definitely be surprised. There are creatures that are like, oh, he's a little incy bincy like spider, and then you look and he's like, holy crap, that dude's big. Let me run away. So it's random, and I think I like that, and especially with the AI that's built into it too as well.
There is a constant joke in my podcast that I'm very bad at video games. I can't wait to get super like just demolished in your video game, because I don't know how it works. I'm very excited. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you,
just
Vaughn.
random like monsters coming out of nowhere and killing me. That would be great.
I don't know. It's cool. I mean, I like I said, I'm playing and developing at the same time, and I'm kind of like, whoa, like that came out of nowhere. And so for the developer to even be surprised is also, I think it's also great for the users to see what we all go through and what we're trying to make for you guys to be happy.
So you also do your own kind of QA testing? That's kind of interesting.
Friends and family help. Yeah, you do QA. You give your phone. Your wife has an iPhone. Your friends have an Android, and you just start to send them like little builds here and there, and run and play it, and they give feedback. Even the audio guy that was working on some of the tracks, he's in Prague. He's in Europe, and he gives me feedback, like, and I try to do the best as I can to fix things and optimize, and remove, to make the memory much smaller. Like maybe I can get rid of this. There is so much to learn when you're trying to release cross platforms. Android textures, iPhone textures. Yeah, this you come into my mind, you'll probably be lost, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it seems like you're much more intelligent than I am. You can actually make a game.
No, you can't too.
My ultimate goal within, like, I want to write about games, but my ultimate goal is to actually develop a lot of connections and then just start to make them. So,
Oh, okay,
you
that's
know
cool.
what? Yeah, dude, I'm gonna hit
I'm
you up
here.
in 10 years.
Look, you gave me my very. I want people to know he gave me my very first podcast interview. So, shout out to Vaughn. I appreciate you so much. Yeah,
So
and
why haven't you gone on any other podcasts? Specifically, I was kind of interested to see that you said that this is your first ever podcast interview. Was it just kind of coincidence you never thought about it before, or was there a reason you didn't want to?
yeah, I didn't want to. One of the main reasons I didn't have time. Like I was working on this game, I didn't have time to do any no media outlets. I have more podcasts coming up now, surprisingly. So you are my first, but I always want people to know, like, hey, Vaughn definitely looked out for me, and it was something that I have to do, right? Like people sometimes say they, like, um, you fell in love with Steve Jobs before you fell in love with the iPhone. So some people say like Alex, you're really genuinely like a good person, and when people hear you and they can relate to you, um, they're gonna kind of relate to your products too as well because they say like Vaughn really worked hard on that podcast. Like I want to support what he does, like this, and he's so passionate about it. And it's something about like people loving a person, and then whatever they like. People love Elon, so they love Tesla, and plus his great product, right? But yeah, I think that's more of one of the reasons why I had to step out and say like, okay, I'm not just some nerdy guy in front of a laptop. Like I actually can hold a conversation at a bar.
Yeah, you want people to kind of associate you with your game instead of just, I don't know, instead of associating a brand with your game, they see you and they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, Alex, I know him. I want to play his games.
Hopefully, yeah, that's one of the greatest of accomplishments if I can get that. But yeah, like sometimes I was very scared to put. I'm still to this day scared to put myself out in the public. I'm always like kind of like, oh no. Even when I wrote iPhone apps that did really well, like I had a business partner in New York and he was like the face, and I was always in the background. I'm like, I don't really want to be the guy on the TV. I've been on TV, but it was like weird, and I was like, okay, let me go back to the dim back in the dark. But I think it's time, like I want people to really appreciate like all the hard work I put in. I want them to be happy. If they're not happy, then let me know and I can work some things out and say, hey, cool, that's a cool idea, I can add that.
Yeah, it's something that's so nice about podcasting is kind of being able to reach out and get outside your comfort zone. Like I'm pretty much a hermit. I just like don't do anything all day and I just play video games and don't talk to people. So podcasting is a nice outlet to meet new people. I've met so
Oh,
many people just through podcasting. It's kind of
wow.
ridiculous.
No, and you really have great energy, and I think that's something that you're blessed with to be able. Like I said, you're my first, and I was very nervous, and then as you started speaking and making it comfortable, I was like, Vaughn has really a great way of introducing and making people feel comfortable and being able to be themselves. So I think thank you so much, and you're doing a great job. So
Thank you. That's very
kudos.
nice of you to say.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That's the second. This is what I mean. Indie developers are just so nice. It's like freakishly nice. Something that Mario said from Pixel Dinos before when I had him as an interview, he kind of did a similar thing. I was like, you don't have to say nice things about me. That's very nice, though. Thank you. That's very cool. So I have
No,
one more
mhm.
question about your game before we move on to more of the questions about you as a person and as a
Okay.
developer. Have you ever thought about any sort of crowdfunding like Kickstarter or
Oh
Indiegogo
man,
or anything like that?
thank you so much. I'm glad you touched on this. I'm gonna be point blank, like honest with you. I started a Kickstarter page, made $1, and
Oh,
I wanna,
damn.
I wanna point that out to everyone because I've had so many people say you can raise this and raise that, and I could probably say it was probably the way I presented the Kickstarter page, probably the way I did it. It wasn't at the best form of presenting it because I was still working on a game and it wasn't like I can present it to people and like it looks shiny and glittery. This is how it's gonna be. And yeah, I think it just got like $1 and I was just like, okay, So then I'm like, all right, okay, cool. Like I'll continue to still make my game. So I just wanted people to know that But going back, like you look at things like that, and they say it starts making all these millions of dollars. You can go back and say like, I tried. I tried Kickstarter, and it didn't hit for me. So maybe, like I said, I might have did something wrong. I heard getting a Kickstarter is very difficult because the process of trying to get your stuff pitched was I had to go through this and that and that and this, and I finally got approved, and it was like, okay, $1, here you go, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of depressing.
it hit me hard. Like I think I was depressed for like a week. I was like, oh my gosh, like no one's gonna like my game. No one likes it. It was really. I'm not gonna lie, it was really depressing because people was like, yo, this is crazy. You should get a Kickstarter. And then I get the Kickstarter and here you go, $1. And I think it's still online. I could be completely honest. Like it's still online. It's probably gonna be overshadowed, but I want people to know, like, hey, even if you get rejected from Kickstarter, still pursue it, man. Still work on it.
That's a great way to look at it. Even if it seems like all is lost, keep going, persevere, and it just might work out for you, which it seems like it has for you. Have you thought about, like, after it comes out on iOS and Android, kind of how you're talking about just going with the momentum of your game, possibly putting on consoles? Have you thought about doing another Kickstarter? Because that happens frequently. I think Heroes Ravaged has 2 Kickstarters. Don't Give Up had 2 Kickstarters. Have you
Oh
thought
wow.
about doing it again?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would. Now that you say, I definitely would consider it because now more people are looking at me like, hey, like I want to invest or I want to put money down. So it's like, all right, okay, I'll exercise that because I do want to bring people in. I do want to bring some talented or people that are just passionate about working on something that they truly love. So yeah, that could be I can definitely do that.
That's awesome. Well, that was the last question I had specifically about Raya. The
Oh,
the
all
rest
right.
of these questions are more about you as a person. First, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite game genre, even though you don't have much time to play them? What's your favorite game genre, and what game genre inspires you most? The one that, I don't know, makes you want to make games.
Man, I mean, I'm like I said, I was a huge Counter Strike person. I played Resident Evil, that the very first original Resident Evil. Um,
With the
it,
nice
it I
tank controls that for some reason when
yeah.
you try to shoot him in the head, you shoot the ceiling. You're like, really, dude? Come on.
That's game development at its finest back in the days. And back in the days we really appreciated that. Like I was like, whoa. Now we look at it, we're like, really? Like that's just physics on there. That's terrible. But yeah, I played one of my favorite game genres is definitely uh I don't know what you would call Counter Strike, but that was basically what I played a lot. And then I played some mobile games. Legacy Discord, was one of the things that kind of like I was like, this is cool. I like this. You're seeing some great graphics on the mobile. Um, I never got into Minecraft. I don't know why. Someone please help me. I never played Minecraft.
I
I
can't
think I
either.
sh-
It's
Oh,
something about
okay.
the art that really bothers me. I love pixel art so much, and
Okay.
Minecraft's art just, I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't understand.
Yeah, these are some of the games where like I need the generation to help me out with like, okay, like I never played this. I mean, of course everyone played Tetris, right? And that's a story by itself where the guy, he made the game, sold the rights, and then later on bought it back because he was like, I feel this game's gonna blow. But yeah, these are like just the classics. And what about you? What are you playing?
Currently, like I said before, I'm playing classic WoW, so
Oh
But
yeah, you did.
I often play like several games at the same time, just
Oh,
so I don't know. I'm kind of just a weird person. So right now I'm playing classic WoW, Don't Give Up a Cynical Tale, and
nice.
Greedfall.
Oh
Uh,
damn.
but there are just so many games out nowadays that it's like you either have to develop all your time to one game or you have to split your time like 50-50 between two
Games.
or more. It's kind of crazy.
That's crazy because as you were saying the games, I was like, oh, like he's playing multiple games at the same time. But what he said, sometimes you do it. But I remember playing one game, and I probably that's probably one of my old time favorite games is the Final Fantasy VII for PlayStation for Sony PlayStation. Um, that's a game that I've spent millions of hours playing, and that's what kind of I think that also helped me inspired with making Raya because I was like, wait, you're able to walk around for this long, and yeah, Final Fantasy. I did definitely didn't want to not shout out Final Fantasy 7.
So that leads me into one of my other questions.
Okay.
So there's this thing in narratives that's called an inciting incident. It's what pushes the protagonist into the actual adventure. So I wanted to know what your inciting incident was into becoming a game developer. What made you want to be one? Or have you just, since you popped out as a baby, you saw a controller and you're like, that's what I want to do. I want to be a game developer.
That's a good wow, good Vaughn. That's a good question, Vaughn. I was not into coding at all. Like I thought I was gonna be a music producer. I grew up in the church. I played drum, piano, bass, and I got a little. I would say like a 15 seconds of fame where I started working with Sony Music and Bad Boy Studios producing, and I was in college. At one point, I dropped out. I didn't think I was gonna like. I'm like, I don't want to, write code. I want to produce. So then, um, yeah, I kind of took sour approach and didn't make the music industry for some crazy reasons. And then I lived in Japan. I flew to Japan, lived there for a while, and that technology just came to me. Like I was looking at people with cell phones starting their car and um, going to the post, like forget going to the post office. Someone was like doing all the stamps on their like phone, and they had like 3G network before like before we did have it, and that's where I really got like technology and started to write code and learn. Went to San Jose, California a little bit, spent time there, and made iPhone apps, and then I was like, you know what? Back in my mind, I was like, I really would like to make a game that whole time, but I wasn't making games. I was just writing apps. So that's where it came. I think probably when I started writing iPhone apps, I'm like, I've read the stories where game development is actually one of the most difficult things to complete. It's harder than like writing like an app or writing an album. Like game development, you see huge studios like close or shut down, and that's something that I'm like, okay, I have to try to accomplish. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm excited to see how this goes for you. I really am excited to see Raya succeed. I think it's a really cool game, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, what you guys go to next, if you're just going to go to a console version or possibly move on to other games. Are there any other like genres or anything you want to move into after you release Raya, like maybe a first-person shooter like Counter-Strike or something else?
Yeah, you know what's funny? I don't really know. Like I feel like it's like for me, like Raya was a canvas. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just had a white canvas, and I was like, okay, let me work on like a character swinging a sword, or let me work on a character jumping, and it slowly began to turn into a game. So I think sometimes some people have projected some things and write it down, but they don't really have the details. They just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna play around with it. So for me, with the next genre, I don't know. It varies wherever I'm inspired to go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I always love to hear game developers either talking about how they made a game based on just one mechanic just because they thought that was cool. Like Greg Lobanov made Wonder Song because he thought the color wheel was cool.
Wow,
And
that's
there's just
crazy.
like so many different developers who have done things like that. And it seems like Raya is like you said, it's a canvas. It's the game that you inadvertently made when you were trying to learn how to make games, which is
Absolutely.
it's really interesting. I love that. That's so cool.
Thanks, Vaughn. Yeah, I'm trying, and that's one of the things I put on my Twitter profile. And when you look at it, it says like just trying. That's because you try long enough, you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, I just finished something. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like I don't want to say fake it till you make it, but it's kind of like that. You're just like I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing, but when I get to the end of it, it's going to be cool. So just trust me. That's
I mean,
awesome.
that's a great advice. Someone gave me a great advice. He said if someone tells you to do something and they pay you to do it and you don't know how to do it, just say yes because you eventually have to learn how to do it and you can get it done. That's enough. If you say no, that's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, there's this weird phenomena where people will go in and actually they'll lie about having education to get into a job because it doesn't actually matter if you had the education because the
Yep,
job is going to teach you anyway.
exactly. That's
So
so
that's
awesome.
just that's really weird.
Yep.
So, a question that's kind of like off the cuff, but just something I was interested in. You talked
hmm
about making a larger studio yourself, but I would like to know if somebody saw your work on Riot or something else, and you were offered to join a larger studio. Would you do it? And what would be your ideal studio to join? Like a Bethesda or Naughty Dog, or just something random off the cuff like Spiders?
Oh, that's crazy because I want to show you a funny story. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I'm around the tech scene in this area. I live in Marina Del Rey, which is close to Playa Vista, Santa Monica, Venice, and I took my 3-year-old to the park. And
Yeah, I can't really hear you right now. I don't know
oh,
what's happening.
okay, hold on. All right, let me see. Um, can you hear me now?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, let me see. Probably. All right,
It's a
because
little
I had.
weird. It kind of sounds like running water.
Oh, really? Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. Can you hear me? I think. Let me. I can't hear you now. Can you hear me now? Oh, I can't hear at all. Let me see here.
Yeah, you gotta love technology. This is always fun.
Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now. Yeah, you're
Okay,
good.
cool. All right. Yeah. So I was at the park with my 3-year-old, and I met a gentleman. He was with his daughter, and we just talking about kids and how hard it is. And he's like, I think his wife was somewhere, and it was just me and him talking. And our kids are just like playing along, and we're just really talking about life. And then he's like, yeah, it's tough, it's crazy, but work is busy. And he said he works down the street, and he just walks. And I was like, oh, cool, like. Um, where is that? And he was like, I work for Santa. He said I work for Sony Studios. So I'm like, oh, I'm like God of War. Like, okay, wow. Like, um, and he said like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I just an indie developer, game developer. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So I immediately show him Raya on my phone, and he picks up the phone, he looks at it, and he's just playing. He's like, whoa, you did this. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, here's my contact. And I'm like, okay. So, you know, long story short, he connected me. He's like, hey, like, if you really to come work in Santa Monica Studios, like, we need people like you. So, just in talks with them and talks with Riot Games, just, I don't know, but I think right for this moment, I just want to focus on putting out something and let people see that what I can do.
That's pretty crazy, though. Just having a casual interaction with somebody from Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah, and one of my friends, he lives in the area of Playa Vista, and I was supposed to meet up with him there too with his kid, and he's like, I'm like, hey, I just ran into somebody from Sony Studio, and I show him the game. He wants to like. He just took my contact, and he's like, what? No way, I applied for that job like 10 times and they keep rejecting me. You got to know someone to get in there. And I'm like, well, I just found somebody. He's like, I live here and I never met anyone. And I'm like, yep, I live like a mile away and I just met someone. So it's very interesting to see, like, I think with companies, everyone says like, oh, you should work for this guy and you should work for that guy. And, the company never really hires like that. So you have to really show them like, okay, this is what I did. Now I can talk for myself. This is my portfolio, basically.
Did you tell your friend you should have showed up at the park when you were supposed to? Maybe you would have met him.
Yeah, I feel like he's a funny guy. He could just, some people have this weird time where they just doesn't hit them. Like it doesn't hit, like they're at a certain place and they're not, the opportunity's not there for them.
Yeah, just crazy coincidences happen every day. So I'm down to pretty much my last two questions. One of them's super weird, so I'm going to save that one just because it's
Go.
something I ask like everybody. It's not going to be that
Okay.
odd. Don't
All
worry.
right, cool.
And one I want to know is what advice would you give fledgling developers, people who want to get into the industry or just want to make their own game? What would you say to them? just, hey, download an engine, or would you give them more specific details?
I would say to learn how to get into anything, like I always say invest in yourself, right? Like no one's gonna take you to like I can take Vaughn to the water, the well, but I'm not gonna I can't I can't teach you how to drink it. Like you have to drink it for yourself, right? Like I can take you there, but I feel like with certain people, like you just have to get into it. Like just download an engine, whether it be Unreal or Unity, and look at some YouTube videos, play around with it, like just get into it. Because the more people, I notice people procrastinate when they talk about like, yeah, I've been meaning to download this and I've been meaning to download that. And just downloading it, trying it, just giving it a try will help you big time. Like, yeah, that's one of the biggest things. It could be difficult, right? It can be hard to learn. But they say the mind is, if you're really willing to do something and love something, you would truly try to understand and learn it. But in class, like people that are like unfocused on anything that they don't want to learn, their brain technically shuts down and they don't want to learn it. So when you actually have a passion for something, you kind of take the time out and say like, that's wrong. Oh, like that character flipped and he fell on his head. That wasn't supposed to happen, but you try to tweak it and see what happens after that. So I just say like more like getting into it, like writing code. When people say like, I want to learn how to program, I'm just pick a language. I would say like I don't know, Java or JavaScript, one of the easier languages, and you know just write a simple print function that shows what you said. So just so you build the mechanics little by little. So just try to get into it, like whether it be small. Don't just try to jump in, but just try it out. Like download the engine, download the particular. If you need to use a C sharp, try to learn a particular programming language or something. Or if you like animations, get a Maya or Blender, which is free, and make a model, make a wall, something small, and you build from there.
Yeah, it seems to be the most common, the most common advice anybody gives, whether it's in like something that I'm trying to do, which is get into the more journalism side of the industry, or what developers have given you, which is just do it, just start it, and you kind of find yourself along the way. You learn how to do everything. That's for the most part why I started podcasting, why I started writing, because everybody's like, just do it, dude. Just start, and then you either build a portfolio or you just sharpen your skills enough to where you can do it eventually. It's the exact same thing as fake it till you make it. It's just you're going to do it, you get better at it, and then eventually you're going to be a master. I mean, it's like I think the quote is if you spend like 10,000 or 100,000 hours, then you're a master at it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. But my last question for you, and this is something that I ask pretty much everybody, so just feel free to be open about it.
Yeah.
What is your weirdest fear? So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think about this while I give you mine. So I've talked about a lot of my weirdest fears on these podcasts, from open water to not being able to see things, like not being able to see my feet underneath things. But this one is a little bit weird, and this actually is probably the weirdest, and it specifically comes from watching The Human Centipede when I was younger. Oh. I'm afraid of people stealing my kneecaps. So
that's funny. Stealing
so my fiance, it's so specific and weird. My fiance will touch my kneecaps while we're in bed. Yeah, I like push her away. I'm like, get away from me. Don't even touch me. Don't even like look at me anymore. It freaks me out because I have this weird, I envision this thing where somebody's just going to walk by and like steal my kneecap.
That's a movie. You should write about that. That's a nice horror movie. Like you should write that.
Just the kneecapper? Yeah. I hope more people are scared of stealing kneecaps. It's specifically just because in The Human Centipede, he removes their kneecaps, so they have to crawl everywhere.
Yeah,
it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. Yeah.
It's gross. Yeah. I hope more people are afraid of it now, so I'm less weird.
I'm scared. I'm afraid of it now just because you said it.
Sweet. I'm spreading it. I'm going to be way less weird by the end of this podcast. Once it airs, there's going to be like 10 people.
When a movie comes out, I'm like, yep, Ron wrote that. I definitely know he wrote that.
Or somebody's going to steal it. You're like, hey, I was there for that. You're a thief. So what is your weirdest fear? The one that you often get looked at and they're like, what, dude? Really?
Weirdest fear.
If you
That's
have
that's
one.
that's a good one because like when anytime anyone mentions fear, it's like one of those words that are like extremely scary, depressing, or just people run away from that. Like that is, and anything in life. Like if you're not like one of the biggest things why you see certain entrepreneurs go hard is because sometimes they're fearless. Like they can start something and they said if this doesn't work, like I'm gonna try something else. Where the majority of people, if they try something and they and it fails, they completely fail for the rest of their lives. Like they're done, and that's one of my weirdest fears is that uh, I hope I don't run into someone that um like I didn't give an opportunity to in life that came by, and and you they said like imagine Vaughn comes up to me and say, hey, like I want to write your next video game. I have a storyline, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I don't want to hear it. I'm good. And then you go and write something that sells $1 billion. That's one of my weirdest fears. I
You're
hope that
afraid of
helps.
overlooking people?
Yeah, I'm very and that's why I always like to give. I know it's weird, but I always like to give people an opportunity because I never got an opportunity. I probably got one opportunity, and that was from a gentleman at Scopely named Henry. And I want to shout him out, but yeah, I think he's probably the only person that gave me an opportunity in life. Everything else I had to like kind of work for, but he just randomly met me and was like, hey, like like you seem very passionate. Like I want to put you in contact with some people. But one of the fears the weirdest fear is like just looking over, someone that's really passionate, has something that they want to do, and not giving them a try, because you got to invest in people.
That's pretty awesome. It shows how kind and seemingly selfless you are, that your fear isn't necessarily something that you are personally afraid of, but you're afraid of not giving people a chance. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, Vaughn. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. That's all the questions I got for you today. Anything specific that you would like to let the audience know about Raya, other than it's, of course, releasing on iOS and Android on October 25th?
Yeah, I would say thank you, Vaughn, for allowing me to get up here, do my very first podcast. I hope I didn't disappoint you guys. I just want to say I love my family, my wife, Patricia, and my son Tyler, and also, just anyone that inspired me to keep working on my game, and follow us on Twitter, Create Lex. Also, if you want to follow my personal account, it's Alex Kissi Jr. And yeah, feel free to hit me up, ask me questions, whatever you need, any feedback. I'm always looking for opportunity for people that want to work together and just make something happen and just put God first.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, that's about the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Of course, make sure you watch out for the actual episode of Indie Incursion that's going to go up on our 49th episode is going to go up on Friday. It will not actually have Josh in it this week. It's just going to be me because Josh is out. So we're going to see how weird that gets. But thank you so much, Alex, for coming on the podcast. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope you guys have a great day.
Thank you.